Welcome back to the What the Falk Sunderland review show. Sunderland failed to double up on their Christmas away day wins as we struggled a bit to a drab 1-1 draw against the team bottom of the league in Rotherham United. But as always, we're going to be here to review the action. I do say, as always, sometimes I like my midweeks off. This one, though, I'm going to do it because I've got a bit of a Saturday off. Just one of us today. So if you thought it was going to be really hard to drag out a 30-minute podcast that normally would struggle to do normally with all of us here. There's only one of us. So pity me. I've only got Ross with me today. Ross, how are you doing? You all right?
Oh, what an entrance that is! Bet the listeners are going to be thinking, "Get in, buzzing for this." But I think you nailed it a bit there. It was turgid for the majority of the time, but we got a point. And there's obviously a lot more to it, but I think this result will all depend on how we do next week. Again, on next week, 3 days, sorry,
Mm.
against Preston at home. Because if you can back it up with a home win, then 4 points away on the road isn't too bad. In hindsight, I probably would have took it against Hull and Rotherham beforehand. Um, but yeah, there's some glaringly obvious things we need to speak about, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm so I mean, you people are probably just thinking, oh God, they've started this podcast positively, but I'm not good. Like it's Friday night. I've had a couple of whiskeys, and also I'm tripping over my words because it was quite boring, to be honest. But I think for me, I'm just look. There was some positives, few and far between. I'm clutching at straws a little bit, but we didn't get a point there last year. We did this year. There's caveats to it. We're playing games every 3 days. You could say that maybe plays into it a little bit. And there was some positive things I saw. Like I actually saw a striker this week at some point, which is another thing we're gonna come on to. And in the dugout and they got a win. I suppose they never stopped trying. That last 20 minutes, one ball goes in. And you never know, but I am clutching at straws a little bit. But it feels quite deflating after that, which is it's sort of in contrast to Hull, but it was a worse performance than Hull, wasn't it? I know you could say, well, if we win, you forget about it, but I think that was poorer than Hull.
Yeah, it was the just the lack of any urgency and any sort of plan that pissed me off. Um, it just seemed like pass sideways, hope for the best, pass sideways, hope for the best, and it just became quite repetitive. And in a way, I think like at the start of the game, Rotherham was so deep and they were very like passive, like let's not let them get away. And I think Rotherham came to a point where we're like, well, we can have a go at these. These aren't going to have a go at us, so we can have a go at them. And it kind of like played into their hands. Um, and again, another unforced error by was it '09 and Job messing on with the ball. They go 1-on-1, and thank God for Patterson tonight, by the way, because it took an absolute screamer to score past them. Let's be honest, it was a good goal by Lucas, but the saves beforehand, three fantastic saves. Um, took some crap after the Coventry game, but he's came back with two fantastic performances where he's pulled off big saves and big moments. I think that's worth pointing out.
Yeah, I
But
think he's
yeah,
responded really well, Pato, actually. You're right. I think after the Coventry game, we did say, like, look, he made an absolute bollock against Bristol City, which I'm sure he'll own up to himself. And he did the same against Coventry for the third. And I don't think he kind of had covered himself in glory too much the weeks before that. But I'm a big Patterson fan. I've always been a big fan of Pato. In general, I feel really safe with him. I think he's one of the best goalkeepers in this league. And I think the last two games he's sort of shown why I probably rate him so highly, and so many people do. But absolutely massive for us tonight. Look, I normally ask you and the lads to pick out one player for good reasons or bad reasons, but I think just to save us the job of having to pick the obvious one, Pato was outstanding tonight and probably the biggest positive I think out of tonight, if anything.
yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. Um, let's see about his saves were 2-3 nil down. It's game over anyways, isn't it? We're not even talking. We're talking a bit negatively here. I imagine if they'd went in, would have been a total different ball. But to be fair, we probably just would have went fuck it and not done it. To be honest, Graham, if we're being honest to the listeners,
I
we would have.
absolutely would have not done that if we hadn't equalised, and that's just the fan in me, unfortunately. The professional says do a podcast after every game. Sometimes I just can't be asked. And 100%, then we have the receipts to prove it in the WhatsApp group chat that said, lads, if we're getting beat, we're not doing a podcast. And I think that's why there's only Ross on. Because you were the only one that had hope that we might get one back from a deflected Jack Clarke shot. But Yeah, sometimes you just, especially after performances like that and games like that, you don't really feel like doing a podcast, and you feel like you should do, but like it felt there was a little bit of chat about maybe slightly on the negative side. But honestly, if anyone's listening and going, "Ah, it's a bit too negative," this we didn't actually want to do it. So you've got one. Good on us. Fair play to us.
Definitely. And fair play, I'm going to say it, but changes being made. I think Beale got it totally wrong today. Totally wrong from the outset. It was turgid. It was wrong. And I think he had a chance to change it early when Roberts got injured, which we will get onto, could be a potential disaster. And then he brought Barn, which to me wasn't the sub to make. Pritchard was the sub to make. To be fair to Barr, I think second half he had a good game, but he didn't affect the game as much for me. And Pritchard came on, was fantastic, as he always is from the bench. There's no debating that. Pembele came on at right back, and he was a right back who can run and overlap, which is not Seal's game, so it's no slight on him. And with Huggins out, we missed that dynamic running, overlapping, creating a space for the wingers and the likes of Pritchard in the 10. And he brought a striker on the pitch. And although Burstow didn't look like scoring once, he took up some good positions and made up some good runs, which then attracted their defence to him to stop the runs or to track them all away, which then opened up the space for the likes of Clarke, Pritchard, Barr, even Neil played a bit higher. And it even just having somebody taking up them areas in a more advanced position, it helps us. Because when Job or Cheech was coming and they were basically playing as another centre fielder, it's so easy to defend. They can just put four men behind the ball and go, come on then, come get past her. And we didn't have anything to do that. So terrible start, last 20 minutes. You've got to have a focal point in this team for our more creative and technical players to thrive in the last 20 minutes to make sure that tonight.
I think that's why we looked so good when we had a really competent centre forward, like last January for a period of time before he done his Achilles, and the start of the season when we had two of them alongside Sims, competent forwards that played in and around the box. And I agree with you on Burstow. I was going to ask what you thought about Burstow, and I think the bulk of people will probably look at it and go, "Oh well, another striker didn't score. It was crap." And whilst he still looks like as raw as anything, the one thing that I did sort of notice, I watched first half, and I was saying like I was half on my phone if I'm honest with you. Um, but I was saying like when I was watching it, I was like, "There's nothing in the box, like at all." Like you're seeing Clarke sort of run 40 yards, getting in the box, trying to put something in, and there's nothing in the box. All the players are sitting waiting around the box, and you're like, well, you need to get in the box. And then you see, I mean, Roberts didn't really have much time to play because he got injured, and God, I hope he's all right. But the players, it looked like we had like four up front, if that made sense. Like you had like Clarke, you had Barr slash Roberts on the right, and then Job and Adil sort of sitting outside the box. When Burstow came on, I thought, just get in the box, kid. And he did, like he was in the box like a lot of the time. And even just there was that point where he sort of clipped the goalkeeper a little bit. And it came to absolutely nothing. But the fact he was in the box meant the keeper had to race out, the defender had to like chase it down. It gets you that little bit further up the pitch. And we'll get on to Pritchard because obviously I think that's a talking point, but it's a talking point every bloody week, isn't it, with Pritchard? But when Pritchard came on, we looked a little bit more like we had an identity and a plan. But I agree with you on Beale. I thought he got it absolutely badly wrong today. I thought we looked completely devoid of ideas, completely devoid of any shape or anything like that. But I will give him credit for the fact that I think at half time he recognised that and brought a striker on just to get something in the box. And then I think the decision to bring on Pembele and Pritchard were good decisions. Maybe Pritchard should have been a little bit sooner, but I thought the Pembele one was a good substitution. And again, it's absolutely no slight on Jensen Seal, but I think having someone who is obviously very composed on the ball, a good passer, but he's a centre half. Like he runs in treacle. Like he's 6'5", 6'6". You can see he's not someone who's going to bomb on and overlap the way that Niall Huggins is. And when you're playing against Rotherham, you kind of need to. And I understand keeping Seal in the team because of his performance against Hull, but if you're going to play him a centre back or play him in a back three. That's where we've seen the best of him for me in a back three against Leeds. You've got Unai in there who's he's not having the best of seasons because this kind of bad run of form's continuing a little bit too long for me. Outside of one or two really good games, I think he's good against Hull. He was very good against Leeds, but in general, he hasn't been great. Shift line up to the right hand side until Pembele is up to speed and get Jensen in the middle with their DB. But credit where credit's due, he did change it a bit more proactively, and we did say that one of the worries that we had about Mowbray was the fact that every substitution was the same and came at the same time. Today was a little bit different. One was enforced. You never know how the game would have went if Robert stays on the pitch, but I thought the decision to bring on a striker just to kind of occupy the centre halves was a good decision. And I think Pembele and Pritchard were good substitutes. You could maybe argue Pritchard should have been on a little bit sooner. But yeah, it is what it is. I just thought, just for a bit of balance, I thought some of these decisions were good proactively, if maybe not the one he started with. And we've picked out a few players already that we've pinpointed. I think Pato was like collectively both the player we want to pick out for that reason. But pick out a player for me, Ross, and for negative or positive or just for whatever reason, from tonight's performance and give me a reason as to why you've picked him out.
Negative tonight. I'm gonna have to pick out Adil O'Cheesh because he's done some really good stuff off the bench. Yet to me, every time he starts a game, especially away from home, it's like playing with 10 men. I don't know what he brings to us away from home. I don't know why he doesn't show what he does at home. Like against West Brom at home, he was brilliant before. He even got took off himself, but I thought he did an outrang and he came off the bench against when he scored against Birmingham, against Norwich, he came on, he looked good.
He was good at
But
Hull. He
away
was
from
decent at Hull.
aye, uh-huh. Yet some games he just looks lost and it's this inconsistency that's really annoying us. Like I thought Ecuador had a slow game again today when against Hull. I thought that's Ecuador I like to see, he's back.
Hmm.
But we'll revert back to type and that's a culture thing as well, I think now. It's starting to become a culture thing within the team. And we talk the whole like the tagline of the whole club now is high performance bollocks, isn't it? Well, high
Mm.
performance means consistently reaching the levels that you're capable of. So we can't just have one good game and then two games off. We've got to do it consistently. And we're mentioning positions here where, let's be honest, we've been linked with two or three players already. Forward areas, centre midfielder, and wingers. There's no surprise that we've been linked with Stansfield, a Japanese striker, the obvious Ahmad links, and then Mvia, because it's glaringly obvious to everybody who watches us that we need more creativity on the wings to take the burden off Clarke and Roberts. We need a centre forward who's going to score goals, and we need a centre midfielder to give Echo and Neil a break because there's literally nobody else to play that role.
I wanted to ask a question on that because I think obviously the links to Villa seem like have come from him, and of course it makes complete and utter sense, so it probably won't happen. Um, but I think, and it's probably gone back there since we lost Corey Evans, who I think we still desperately miss. But the player I wanted to pick out was Equa. And I said something after the Coventry review, and I said, like, look, if there's decent money on offer for him at this point, I would take it because I thought he was bad when he first came in. I thought he was then superb. And I think sans the whole game, where he was very, very good and looked like the Equa we know he can be. I think he's been really poor since he came back from injury, like really poor and gutless at points. But like after I said that on the podcast, I sat and I thought, right, just for balance, like, has he not got enough experience around him to look after him because he was only playing under 21 football not that long ago? And you say, well, Daniel's played over 100 games, but a lot of them at League One level, and then only one season in the Championship, and he's still very, very young, Daniel. Daniel, for me, one of the first names on the team sheet, but learning, progressing week on week on week. He's not there to progress someone else. He's not at that age yet or that experience yet. Somebody like a Corey Evans, an Mvia, someone who could come in and just sit and kind of go, lads, just take it, like, just have a minute to yourself. Like, you don't have, like, that's what we sort of miss. Do you think that, because I think naturally you look at the players you've got and you say who's not been good, X, Y, Z. And for me, Ekwa was the player I picked out because I think he's been honking, to be honest with you, sans that whole game the other week. I think he's been really poor. And it takes me a while these days to dig these lads out because I really like them, but I think he's been poor. But in the interest of fairness, the links to people like Mvia and players of similar ilk, who I'm sure will be linked to, and a Corey Evans, do you think like with someone who can just sit, like a Corey Evans even, if he comes back from injury in time, would benefit Ecuador? Do you think that's kind of what the boys in the middle are missing? Just someone to be like a level head and kind of help them progress naturally to be a better footballers?
Yeah, definitely. I think it was best football for us was about end of last season, where he was a box-to-box midfielder as well, and he wasn't just a sitting one
I agree
where
with
they
that
could where
100%.
they yeah, and where they rotated. And I remember deadline day, weren't we after a Turkish centre midfielder, a defensive centre midfielder
That would have
who
been it.
played like so many games for Fenerbahce, and it felt like so the club have clearly identified that as a position, but they believed at the time, right, we've got enough.
If we'd signed a
So
Turkish player, though, it would have been a delight.
hey, I
Ah,
like that one. That was good. That was good.
you could tell I was trying to get it in. I was like,
Yeah, they did try. But no, again, I feel like Echo and Neil were gonna run them in the ground. If one of them gets injured, mind, we're in big trouble. Big trouble. Like look when Echo got injured, we're lost. And they need rotation in there and Matete has on about come back, but again, he started what, two, three championship games? We need someone in there who's got a bit of know-how about them. Or not just championship experience, but like not a kid. We need a professional who's been around and done that. I'd say someone who was even around 26, but Nazir Russian's 26 and he doesn't get on the football pitch anymore. So what do I know about football, Graham? What do I know?
same, mate. I think it's like glaringly obvious. We've been seeing it for ages and ages and ages, and then the results were really good towards the end of last season. And I like the model. Shock horror. I like the model. Like, I know people think I hate it, but I like the idea of signing young sort of gems at a really low cost and them being developed into really good players. I think the amount of players that I could list that we've done a good job with, Trey Hume, Dennis Sirkin, Dan Ballard, like Jack Clarke. There's too many players that I can mention there, and there's other ones that I haven't even brought up that are proof that that model works. But where a lot of these players maybe get let down is the fact that they have to learn from other 21-year-olds. And you just need to see what it's like when Pritchard's on the pitch and what I've mentioned Corey Evans more than I've ever mentioned him in any podcast, by the way, in this podcast. But a Corey Evans, you see what these players have learned from those players when they're on the pitch because it takes so much from them. Because no matter how good of a player you are, unless you're like Lionel Messi, you cannot extract 500 worth of appearances in the championship and above. And in football, just overnight, no matter how good you are, you can't be as streetwise as Pritchard. Like Dan Neil's played 100 and odd games, but he's still not going to be as streetwise as like a Pritchard. Like Dan Ballard, brilliant defender, incredibly cultured. I think he'll be a fantastic player. I think he'll play in the Premier League. But I bet you he picked up loads from Danny Bart last season, like tons from him. And I think for me, the model, if you have seven or eight 21-year-olds and three 29, 30, 31-year-olds in your spine, I think it works an absolute treat. I think you look at like, I know it was League One, but going into the start of the championship last season when our spine was Danny Bart, Corey Evans, Ross Stewart, all players 26, 27 and above, two of them in the 30s, with Pritchard mixed into that. We were brilliant start of last season and only injuries kind of killed it. So I'm not against the model of it. And I think most people feel the same. It's that tiny, tiny tweak of letting them learn from someone much more experienced than themselves. That will change drab 1-1 draws against Rotherham into 2-1, 3-1 wins against Rotherham, where young players look fresh and exciting and talented, and your experienced players are guiding the ship. Like Christian Speakman is much more involved in coaching football and understanding football than I ever will be because I'm nothing but a fan, really, a journalist at best. But that's up for debate, I suppose. And the same applies to Mike Dodds and the players that are on the pitch. But to me, it just seems such a fucking basic thing. You could have this perfect model if you just tweaked it like a tiny, tiny little tad. And the most they've tweaked it in the past year has been Bradley Dack, which is an injury-prone player that can't get on the pitch.
Yeah, I was watching the Brighton game last night, and you looked at their squad. They've got Danny Welbeck, Adam Lallana. You know what I mean? Like
James
they've got
Milner.
these James Milner, experience all over the pitch, and they're maybe not at the peak, but they're letting all these other young talents. They're learning from them every week, and yeah. So you've got to have a mix. You know what I mean? We're not asking for drastic changes, and I think this next month's huge for the club. I really do. I feel like we're at a crossroads at the moment. We feel like, do we want to tread water and see if we can fluke it in the playoffs, or are we serious about getting in the playoffs? And I feel like these next 4 weeks will really show where we're at and how ruthless we're going to be as a club. Because let's be honest, there's a few of the model signs haven't worked. Jewison Bennett was on the bench today. He's not going to get a look in.
I think
Which
Bar's verging on the not working model as well, to be honest. I know he was okay second half. There was one point when he's cutting to the middle of the pitch and he put Rotherham on the break, and I'm like, what are you doing?
the one thing I would say about Bar is though, he's at least showed it over a period in spells, starting in the team.
I think it's up for
Whereas
debate that.
I'd argue last season when he played in the 10 role against Norwich and then he played at home, can't remember who it was against, he was good. And then the start of this season, he scored at home against Watford, against QPR, he was good. Against Southampton, he was good at home. It's just inconsistent. Again, though, that could just be our team name, inconsistent AFC. Because when we're good, we're brilliant. Like the last 20 minutes, Rotherham couldn't go to us when we're going forward. And they were relieved at the end. But for the 70 minutes beforehand, utter shit. We did nothing with the ball. We had pointless. I say everybody was on about possession, control the game. Pointless possession is worth nothing. You've got to have possession with intent, or at least where you're creating traps to bring their players out and then create gaps and spaces in behind. If you're not doing that, then you're just wasting everyone's time. And our messing about with the ball is what's then bringing us under pressure, which we've seen in the defeats to Coventry and uh, the goal we nearly conceded tonight when Patterson pulled us out of shit. And it's becoming a common theme of where we can't keep going off the bench and changing it. We've got to start controlling games, and that'll be that's one of the things I'd argue at times when it worked well. Mowbray did that. I don't think Michael Beale in the 3 games he's had has had any great control over any games. We played well at Hull, but we're playing a good team, but we never had any control. And I feel like that's where the next step's got to be, and that might come from getting a midfield enforcer. It might come from having a forward on the pitch. So it's not like to say like he's got everything in. He's had everyone. He's tried everything and it's not working. But he's got to basically. I feel like the next month's huge on and off the pitch. First and foremost, we can't sell anyone good because if we lose any good player, we lose Ballard, we lose Clarke, Kiss goodbye the season. It's gone, and it's a total lack of ambition from the hierarchy. We've got to keep our main players, and we've got to add experience or quality. It can be 20, like Stansfield, 21. He scored goals in the championship. He's quality. I don't care. I don't think it'll happen, but players of that ilk have got to come in. Like Ahmad, he wasn't experienced, but he flipping tremendous. I can't say it happening, but some players of that ilk have got to come in for us to be serious about getting where we want to go. We said we wanted to be better every year. Well, so far it's not looking good unless we really turn the corner in the second half of the season.
Obsession with progression. Not quite seeing that obsession come to fruition at the moment, which is a lot of rhyming words, which I did on purpose. Um, I can see us bringing in someone like Alfredo Morelos, no now look gets sent off in the first 10 minutes against that lot up the road in the FA Cup game. But at this rate, to be honest, I take anyone that has scored goal previously at some point. I think
Did
Stansfield's
he
a pipe dream, but
did he see Morelos, the state he was in when he played in Brazil?
yes.
He's got a bigger gut than me, and I nearly have a heart attack every time I'm walking up the Premier Concourse. So you might as well stick me up front with Bradley Dack. Fucking hell.
Well, if we're going down to that extent, I'd say use me. I go for a run per day, so at least I can keep up for like an hour, which is more than Bradley that can do, to be fair. But um, couple of listener questions, and when I say a couple, I mean absolutely tons. Okay, I can't really answer this question because I'm not Elon Musk. Um, but I kind of get the point. It's from Ryan. It says, "Can X please be closed down, Twitter, when SFC either draw or lose because the reactions are ridiculous?" I can't really answer the question because no, I can't turn X and Twitter off. But I kind of get what he's saying is like, are the reactions overblown? And one of my questions was going to be that myself because it's a busy Christmas period. We've got a good win at Hull. We got beat here last year. Are they overreactive or are they kind of fair? I think it's fair, but I'll throw the question to you as well.
On the performance, I think it's fair. For 70 minutes against bottom of the league, it wasn't good enough. If we're honest about reaching the levels where we need to be. Um, with a one, like I say, with a 1-1 draw away from home after beating Hull, if we back it up against Preston, you could look back at it and go, God, that was a bit hysterical the way someone on. But again, it's all reactive, isn't it? And sometimes I feel like certain players do get mauled, like Bar today. I don't think he did anything bad apart from that one bit you mentioned where he left it on the halfway line. But he
Mhm.
wasn't the only person to lose the ball in bad place today. Job was really poor in losing possession. Yeah, I see nothing about him on Twitter losing the ball, and Bar was like, "Ah, get him off." I even seen one person put like, how's Bar still on the pitch?" It was like, "Well, we've used our allotted slots for substitutions." Um, so
Unless you went down
sometimes
to
it's
10 men.
aye, but I feel like again, I feel like it was. I get where he's coming from. At times I can say that, but I think tonight, based on the performance we put in, everyone's well within the rights to say how shite it was.
I always say I don't think Twitter's a barometer for anything. And in many ways it's not in everyday life. But I don't know. I don't know if I've just got good people that follow me on What the Falk. But I do feel like a lot of the time, the bulk of people like you can't kid a kidder. Do you know what I mean? Like they know their football because they're like us, besotted with it and obsessed with it. And gorge on about 40, 50 million podcasts per week and then record them and then listen to other ones and listen to more football and watch more football. We're all obsessed with it. And it's ridiculous. We should just stop because life would be sometimes a bit easier, but that little high that we get keeps us addicted to it. Um, but I think because of that, Sunderland fans kind of know their onions. So I do sometimes feel like, yeah, there's one or two that's a bit overboard, but like Beale's appointment in the first place, you can't kid a Sunderland fan, in my opinion. They could see it, the multitude of factors that where that wasn't quite right. Um, quick one, which is coming from your last Ross. She says, "Where's it gone? I just had it before. Do you want her to return with Sunderland pajamas?" Now I've read this very differently, so maybe you've already got the pajamas on. You've already got the pajamas on. Fair play.
I tell you what, like they're not very, they're a bit skin tight. It's fair to say.
No comment. Um, really good question from Martin. Martin, I've actually met. I really like Martin. Met him. I can't remember what game it was before, but I've seen him a couple of times. And he's one of those weird people that actually likes the podcast by us, which is very odd, but very, very welcomed. And thank you very much, Martin. But Martin's asked a great question. He said, "Are we going backwards?" Cracking question that.
Martin, I used to sit in front of him in the southwest corner as well.
Great
So I
lad.
moved. But it depends because you look at where we are now to where we were last season. All the metrics say that we're doing better. Yet the eye test for me says this is a far stretch from the free flowing attacking football we were seeing last season. So I don't know. I feel like we're again on the pitch, performances and the style, it looks like we are, but result and all of the metrics about chance creation, goals scored, etc., we're probably doing better. But again, well, the proof will be in the pudding at the end of the season to see where it is. But I know I reiterated this before, but this one feels massive. The games we've got coming up, the transfer window, what can we do to affect it? can we give ourselves the best chance of improving on last year? I know everyone's saying as well that it's a better league this season. I think the top three, top four are better, but I don't think the league is, if I'm honest, because we were playing better last season and we were struggling to get in the top six for the majority of it. We were in the top six on Boxing Day. We haven't, to me, we haven't even played well much this season. So I feel like if the teams are like Hull, who we're going to be playing in challenging for, we're still well within a shout. But I get what he means about are we going backwards, because at times the football is painful to watch in comparison to what we produced in last season.
I think like the we're a database club, aren't we, these days? So they're probably looking at the data and saying, well, actually, the metrics say we're performing better. But the eye test, I agree with you. For me, to answer Martin's question, I think we are going backwards a little bit. I don't think the man we've got in the dugout is as good or as experienced or plays as good football as the man that was in the dugout a few weeks ago, who I felt should have been moved on and replaced by somebody else. However, that person wouldn't have been Michael Beale for me, but that's a different conversation for a different day, isn't it?
Graham, I'd just like to say I retract all praise from Michael Beale. Someone just texted me there saying that they turned on Michael Beale's interview with the club, which reflected on the point, and they turned it off after they heard dominant display. Dominant display. Your face just said it all, which people can't see. It was like tuna wasp. What dominant display did he say? Because see, we've even been nice to him, we've praised him for his changes, and then he still manages to piss us off.
I
I
mean,
hope I'm getting. Obviously, we haven't. We'll have to caveat that we haven't actually heard ourselves, and I'm just getting a text. But if he has said that, then that's worrying.
I mean, was
Dominated possession, but we did nothing with it.
you can pass the ball backwards and sideways. That's fine. 70% possession we had tonight, but that's because most of it went backwards and sideways. But we've got one more, then we'll do with the good, the bad, and the not the hume, the hmm.
Mm.
Um, and I'm going to save my thoughts on Michael Beale with that because it caveats into something, and that's one of my bad. Um, there's been a few people ask the same question. Is there any justification for Pritchard not starting every game? I'll take that one if you don't mind. Absolutely not. Um, he's far and wide, I think, even more so than Jack Clarke, our most creative player. It's very, very obvious that when he comes on the pitch, we're a completely different side. And yet he sits on the bench and we try to flog him for absolutely sweet FA in the summer. And I think that in there lies a lot of my issues with the way the club is going at the moment. Alex Pritchard, for me, plays every single week. There's three names that, for me, get on the team sheet every single week. One of them is Jack Clarke, for obvious reasons. The other one is Daniel Neal, and the other one is Alex Pritchard. I think almost every other player you could arguably have a question mark on, maybe a bit harsh on Pato and Trey Hume, but for me, those three players are massively important. I've obviously missed somebody out there, and someone's going to pick me out on that. But yeah, I
I'll
mean,
do it.
for who?
I'll do it for you, Ballard.
Oh, aye, yeah, okay, fair enough. But like Pritchard's of all those players we've mentioned, Pritchard's the one that doesn't start regular, and that can maybe that sort of raises my point, I guess. But Ross, we'll go into the good, the bad, and the good, the bad, and the Trey Hume. That's not fair because that means that Trey Hume's a which is not really the case. We'll stick to the original format. What's your good?
The good was the last 20 minutes in our attacking intent. The bad was the absolute disaster class of first half, where we did absolutely nothing, in my opinion. And the is part of Roberts' injury. Let's hope it's not bad, because if it is, then I know we all say like, oh, his end product needs to be better, but I still think with a striker on the pitch, the balls for etc. that he put in the box against Hull, he's a great asset to have, and we play better with him, and we'll miss him. We'll see how much we'll miss him when he's not there.
Agree on the Roberts thing. Yeah, I do. I've toed and froed with it, and maybe his numbers are not that great, but you're right with that ball that he put across the box for Hull. A half decent striker sticks that in the back of the net. The good, mine's dead basic. Jack Clarke, Mr. Reliable. We haven't scored a goal away from home. That hasn't been scored by Jack Clarke since September. That's an absolute fucking abhorrent stat, but it shows you how important he is. And I hate when people say, "Where would Sunderland be without Jack Clarke?" Well, we're not without him. We had him, we scouted him, we signed him, we bought him. He wears a Sunderland shirt. He's signed a contract with Sunderland, so it's a ridiculous statement. Jack Clarke plays for Sunderland, but as ever, he's just so reliable and he pulls us out of the shit every single week. Um, and the boy at this point deserves to be playing Premier League football. I just hope for a fact. I hope that he doesn't think that and he stays with us at least until the end of the season. I'll give you the before I give you my bad because I think the bad maybe sums up how I'm feeling a bit at the minute. It'll leave you with a bit of a shitty ending to the pod, but here we are. The is what we touched on before. Why we don't see more of Pritch when it's like it's smacking me in the face like a brick when you see how obvious it is what he brings, why that doesn't smack numerous managers in the face, Christian Speakman and KLD in the face, that despite the fact he's 30, he's one of our most creative and best players and makes us such a better side, will continuously baffle me. But I've probably had too much Jack Daniels to talk about that. I'll probably say something that'll get me wrong off like media or something. But um, the bad is a little bit of off-field stuff and maybe away from the match. Just the feel around the club at the moment, something feels really off, and it's really worrying me. If you look back over the past few podcasts, I've done it with numerous different people. James Copley from the Sunderland Echo has been on. Lee's joined us recently. You've been on. Brad's been on when we've won. Um, and he's at Rotherham tonight, fair play. He wanted to be on, but he couldn't be. And Dave's been on. And we always come back to something that's like what they're doing with the tickets, giving them kicking fans out their own seats. Uh, Something going wrong with like club merchandise, the appointment of the managers, the fact that it took 2 weeks, 2 and a bit weeks to find Michael Beale, the performance of the players being on the pitch, and there's questioning some attitudes on the pitch. The field just isn't good at the minute, if I'm honest with you. And even today, we couldn't even get the bloody tickets on sale. And look, I know people say it's a Ticketmaster thing. I've been on Ticketmaster loads. It's never done that for me before and gone, oh, mistake. Come back in 3 hours' time. It's never happened to me. Ticketmaster's not the best website in the world. Trust me, it's bloody awful. And I don't really like them. But the website works when I want to get a ticket for a gig. It just depends if I'm fast enough. And for some reason, our Derby Day tickets got absolutely messed up. And it just summed up that stinky feeling at the minute that feels very League One. But anyway, that's my bad.
No, I think you're spot on there. And that's why I think this month's huge because we've got, it's a transfer window, we need to show our intent. And then I think if the club show their intent, the fans will back them all away. But if they also do the opposite
Mm.
and show their lack of intent, the fans will certainly let them know then as well. And let's be honest, we have some huge, huge games coming up. You mentioned the Derby Day there. That could go really south. That's my worry
Yeah.
as well. And then we've got some big league games coming up. So yeah, just win. Just win games.
Ross, thanks for joining. I hope not everyone's been
Aye.
too sad about it.